Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. Welcome back to Jamie Photography. It's a little bit shorter video than normal, but I've had a few people contact me and ask me about shooting RAW with your iPhone or with your Android phone, and how good could it be. So I thought I'd just show you how we can do that, and most importantly, how we transfer the files from the phone into Lightroom in the RAW format, because it's not as straightforward as you might think it is. Inevitably you end up with the JPEGs and not the RAWs. So I'm going to just take you through that process, and then we'll do a quick edit on this image here. Now this is Tilney Hall. This is the back of Tilney Hall, which is a wonderful hotel in Hampshire in England. This is the water gardens out the back of the hotel, and we took a walk in the morning. Not a lot of light, not a lot of contrast, but only had my iPhone. Wanted to take a shot here, thought it was very nice, so I took some images, and what we're going to do is just briefly, we're going to run through and just process it and work through there. If you haven't already subscribed, it'd be great for you to join me here on YouTube, having a great time. Always welcome your comments or questions. This particular video came from questions from people, so feel free to ask anything, and I always appreciate your tips as well. Okay, let's get started. So in your photo browser, you'll find where you've put the pictures. In the case I use iPhone. In the case of Apple, if you shoot on the phone, then it automatically puts it into the photo album. So what I've got here is some shots, as I said, that we took in Hampshire recently. I didn't have my camera with me, but I did have my iPhone with me. So I selected RAW and I shot these images in RAW on the iPhone. Now, how do you get these images into Lightroom in the RAW format? Because if you just sort of grab these images and then place them on a folder on your desktop, what it will do is it will transfer them as JPEGs. It won't transfer them as RAWs, so it'll automatically have processed them and you'll get the processed images. So what we need to do in this case, and I can't speak specifically for Windows here, but I know that you've got the same function. But in Mac, what we do is we go up to File here, we go down to Export, and that's what you'll need to find, is where the export is. You can export, as you see, it says export 7 photos. Well, that will be JPEGs. If you go down below, you'll find export unmodified originals. That's what you're looking for. Okay, so you can click on that, and then it will bring up this dialog box. So inside the export dialog, you'll find there is a checkbox here. It says here, export the IPTC as XMP. Well, don't worry too much what that's about. It stands for the International Press Telecommunications Council, which is a type of metadata that's stored in the background for the image. And XMP is the main carrier used within Adobe, particularly with Lightroom and Photoshop when you're using RAWs, and it's extensible metadata platform. It doesn't matter too much, but we check it because we are going to be using Lightroom and Photoshop. It doesn't matter if you don't do it, it still works fine, but it just keeps things more compatible. So don't worry too much, that's what this sort of stands for. Then you've got the file name, where you can put your own file names in here, give them file names if you wish. You can just pull that down and you can use a title. You can select, I just use the file name for now. And then you can add a subfolder type format. So you can do that, add those into where you're exporting. Again, I'm going to select the folder where I'm going to put these. So I just click export, and then it takes me to my file management system here, and I've already selected, as you can see here, I've already selected the folder where I want to put it, so there's nothing in there at the moment. So I'm just going to say export originals. So I click on that, and what it will do, it will move those over. Now in Lightroom, we want to go to import, and we want to go to that folder once we want to import the images into Lightroom. So what I'm going to just do here is just come away from that, and then I will go back to that because it refreshes it, and there you are. There the image is now ready to be imported. So that was inside the import module. Now, as always, you can choose to copy them as DNGs. You can just copy them as they are in the RAW format. They've already been made into DNGs, as you can see, or you can just add them straight from the folder. So I'm just going to put add here. So we're just going to keep them in the folder that they're in. I'm not going to make an additional copy of them. And then I'm just going to make sure your smart previews, build smart previews is checked. That just makes sure that you've got an easily working preview when you go in there. So I'm just going to click, and what we're going to do is just import those images. There we go. So they're now in Lightroom. So as we normally do, we get from our starting point, normally the camera, we download the files, import them into Lightroom. So that's how we get from your phone to Lightroom using your photograph browser, and that's how we make sure that we've got the raw images, not the JPEGs. I know some people get a little bit frustrated about that. It took me a little bit of time to figure it out a while ago when I first looked at it, so it's quite a useful process. So let's do a process on these images, and we'll go to develop. We've got the image here. Each of them should be, there was handheld 12 megapixel image here. I mean, if we zoom in on this, let's just have a little zoom in and see. So we go to 100%. You know, it's an iPhone picture, but it's still pretty good. So let's go through and process. So we had, in total, we had 7 images. Now the reason we shot 7 images, and you just literally hold the camera and just keep pressing the button until you get 7 images, is that with the smaller sensors you do tend to have a little bit more noise because the pixels are so small. You know, 12 or 48 megapixels inside a little tiny sensor, which is only a few millimeters across, is a real technical challenge to pull off. So there is a balance between the capability of those small pixels, the noise, and the computation within the camera itself to compute that information. But what we get from cameras these days is truly amazing. So we took 7 shots. We do that because we're going to stack them in Photoshop just to make sure we've really got the highest quality. But we just want to check that the image itself is looking pretty good. And then what we're going to do is we're just going to select all of the images here. So click number 1, hold down the shift key and click number 7. I'm going to go across here and make sure auto sync down this bottom right here is switched on. You can turn it on with this little toggle switch here. Make sure auto sync is turned on, because what that means is any change I make here on this image will apply to all 7 of them, so I don't have to copy and paste later. So let's just bring down the exposure just a little bit. There we go, about 0.45. I'm going to bring the highlights down a little bit as well, not too much, and just open up the shadows just a little bit. Check my blacks and my whites, so I'm going to hold down the Alt key or Option key on a Mac, and then I'm just going to move this to the right with the whites until we start to see some white to appear. We don't want the whites appearing, so just bring it back. So I'm going to go plus 45 on there. That pushes our full dynamic range up on the slider up here, and then I'm going to go to the blacks, hold down the Alt or Option key, and look where we are. So actually I've got to come up slightly because there's some blacks in the bottom there, so plus 25. So that gives us pretty good contrast in the image itself. Quite happy with that. What I'm also going to do is I'm going to just go down to lens correction, and I'm just going to check remove any chromatic aberration. It's not really necessary, but just going to do it anyway. And I'm just going to enable the profile correction. Okay, so Lightroom is pretty well up to date with most cameras and phones. As you can see here, the make is Apple iPhone 15 Pro Max. It knew which one it was, and it's got the profile for it, so it's applied that. So that's with and that's without. You see there's a slight shift in the way that the perspective in the center of the screen is delivered. So, and it also takes out any vignetting at the edge. So that's fine, that's done. I don't think we need to do much more here. I'm going to go down to transform just below this. Just going to click auto just to make sure the whole image is square and the water tower here is straight. And that works very well. So all the images will now be exactly the same because we had the auto sync on there. Just going to give it a little bit of vibrance just to make it all pop a little bit with the greens and a little bit of clarity. And I think we're in a good place. So I do want to just darken down that sky just a little bit at the top. So let's go to the masks. Let's go to linear gradient. And I'm just going to pull a linear gradient slightly off angle. So this top left corner is a bit darker because we have the tree darkening this corner over here. I'm going to drop the exposure down just a little bit, and I'm going to add a little bit more blue on the temperature slider here just to make that sky pop up there. That looks quite nice. And we can even do another one. Right click on the square here and click duplicate the mask. Okay, and then I'm just going to take that back a little bit, so it's just picking up that top left corner, maybe just a little bit more blue in that top left corner. Really makes it look very nice indeed. So that's good. I'm going to come out of the masks here. I think we just need to look at the crop. There's a bit too much in the way of foreground here, and this is sort of dominating a little bit over here. So I'm going to go to the crop here. Just going to pull this up slightly and pull this down slightly. So we're getting a bit more of a sort of panoramic view there. So I'm just going to go over to the where the padlock is. Make sure it's unlocked. You can click on that by unlocking it. Go into where it says custom, and we can pick 16:9, which is a standard ratio format, and then we can just pull that to the center, so you can see that's sort of running to the center line. I might want to pull a little bit off the left here, because this is sort of a bit duplicated and a little bit boring here with this sort of paneled area. So let's take the side here and let's just bring that over to, say, the edge of the window there, and maybe just a little bit off the other side, just so. No, I'm not going to. I'm just going to keep it there. I think that looks okay. Just recenter that. That's nice. Hit return. There you got your image. So now we're actually running with quite a smaller image now. So as you can see, we're only running at about 7 megapixels. But it's still, this is what I've got here is a 5K display, and it still has to zoom in to get to 100%. So the image itself is still around about, as we say, 6K. It's still pretty good quality. It certainly works well for Facebook and Instagram or anything like that. And you could certainly print this to at least an A4, possibly even an A3 size piece of paper. So let's now look to make sure that they're all the same. So that's the first one. There you go. They're changing as we just look along. So that, I didn't do anything there. That was just with the auto sync on. Just went down to have a look at them. Okay, great. What we're going to do now is going to combine them together. So we're going to right click, okay, and we're going to go to edit in, okay, but rather than going up to Adobe Photoshop, I'm going to go down and say open as layers in Photoshop, right on the bottom here. We're going to click on that, and what it's going to do over the right hand side, you can see it's loading each of the images as a layer in Photoshop, and we should have all 7 there shortly. So there we go. So now we've got all 7 in the Photoshop. We're going to highlight the top one. There we go. And we're going to hold down the shift key and we're going to highlight the bottom one. So all of them are highlighted together. We're then going to go up to edit. Okay. And we're going to go down to auto align layers. And we do this because, remember, we were handheld. So each image is going to be ever so slightly different. So auto align layers, I'm going to click that. Now you can select in here different options. Auto generally works very, very well. If you've got a real high sense of perspective in the image, then you can use perspective. But here I'm just going to click auto and I'm going to click OK. And what it's now going to do is now just going to process those images. There you go, it's done that. So they are all now aligned. So to be fair, I wasn't too far off. You can see there's a slight deviation at the edges here, but I held it very, very, very firmly and just pressed the button very gently. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to go down to where all of the layers are highlighted here. We want to right click anywhere, okay, and we want to convert to a smart object. All right, so we want to make it into one file. So effectively I'll click on convert to smart object and you can see it's done very quickly. That's one of the good things about using less megapixels is that our computers become really fast, because obviously the sheer number of computations they need to do is substantially less. You can see how quickly the computer is able to do these computations. So now we've got everything in one layer there. What we're now going to do is going to go up to the layer selection at the top here, and then we're going to go down to smart objects, okay, because we've just made it a smart object. So now we have some options because it's a smart object. And in smart objects, we're going to go down to stack mode, okay, and so we're able to bring all of these images together into a single image. Now if you go into mean and you just select it and give you, there we go, that's the image. That's now a single image. Go back into layers, go back into smart objects, go down to stack mode, and instead of mean we'll try median this time. So it'll just compute that. There we go. And actually median's slightly better. Certainly no noise in the image whatsoever. So that's fine. So let's zoom back out there and place it in fit full screen. So there's the image now. It's a single image. So what we do need to do is right click back on this layer here. Okay, and what we need to select is rasterize the layer. That takes it back out of smart object mode, puts it and just rasterizes it as a single image. And rasterization is the process of taking the image which was in a vector format, which is what you use when you're in smart object mode, which is sort of shapes and lines effectively. And what we need to do is put it back to a grid of pixels effectively, and that's what rasterization is. And that, so we just click on that to re-rasterize it. And what that does is it gives us all of the features about tone control, light control, as opposed to the geometry of the shapes and the objects within the image. So I know it's quite technical, don't worry about it too much, but we need to go through that process to be able to use the functions within Photoshop. So now we have a single image. We're sort of done here really. We don't need to do a sky replacement. I think the image looks quite nice as it is. So just before we go back into Lightroom, maybe there's just a couple of things we want to sort out. I think I want to just take out this life buoy over here. This buoy. So we're just going to go up and find the remove tool. There it is under J. We can do that. So I'm just going to take the remove tool, pop it over there and click. So I've highlighted that. There we go. It's got rid of that. And of course we need to get rid of the reflection as well. Whilst we're here, let's take out that sign. So just nice and small there. That'll get rid of that. I'm just going to take that drain out as well. You know me, when I get going with the remove tool, I can get quite excited. What else is there here? Another sign over here. Just going to take that one out as well. So no problem with that. I think we're pretty well in a good place. Just looking around the screen here, holding down the space bar, by the way, to just move it around. By the way, when we were here walking around this morning, looking into this lovely water garden area, the fish in this pond were huge. They were absolutely 2 to 3 feet long kois. Fantastic to see. They obviously look after them well here at Tilney Hall. So we're going to throw this back into Lightroom now. So File, Close, Save. Here we go, back into Lightroom. So we're just going to process the image to completion. So a little bit bland at the moment. So we just need to give it a bit of drama. Let's have a think, how can we bring drama to this image? Because rather flat, it was a low contrast day. We don't have any lanterns to do any day to night here. So that really is not going to work so well. So what we need to do is create a sense of contrast and a sense of depth. And how I generally do that is I take the image that we've got. So this is the image we're now working with. I darken the image down. So we're going to go down 1 full stop. Okay, if you can't get the slider to 1, you can always just click on that box there and just put -1 return, and that will give you the reduction you need. So we've darkened it all a little bit. We're looking at the sky up there. The sky does still look quite nice. So let's just go to masks. Let's go to the sky selection. I don't want the tower to be covered here by this selection. So what we're going to do is subtract and then select an object. Okay, and I'm just going to make the brush a little bit smaller using the square brackets to the left of the return key. And I'm just going to select that tower. There we go. And it will subtract it from the sky. There you can see that. It has taken away, unfortunately, I'm just going to zoom in here. It has taken away the little bit in the middle there. So we can go to add and then select the brush. And then I'm going to take a small brush. And we're just going to make sure that the feather's not too high. We can put the flow all the way up. So we've got a nice hard edge there. And I'm just going to click once at the top there and then shift and click again down the bottom. So we can just put that sky back into there. And there's a little bit there as well that you can see, just a little bit there. So I'm just going to put that back in as well. Right. So let's go back to the full image size. Go back to fit. So that's all clear. Happy with that. I don't mind it bleeding into the trees a little bit because we get a little bit of the sky into the trees, which makes it look quite good, quite normal. So that's our selection. So we're going to maybe look at the exposure. So we're going to bring up the contrast. Let's do that. Let's bring up the contrast, bring down the highlights slightly, maybe open up the shadows in the sky just a little bit. maybe just a little bit brighter, bring up the exposure. I'm just going to go down to clarity. Clarity always helps a sky, particularly when there's clouds in there. So we're just going to give it a whole handful of clarity and just a little bit less on texture. So the sky's a little smoothed just a little bit as we look at it there. That's fine. I think the contrast up here is a bit much. Just going to back that off just a little bit. There we go. That's good. So that's the sky for now. Right, we need to just light the scene itself. I think what we can do is go to create another mask, take a radial gradient, and what we can do is perhaps brighten the sky from the left to the right. So we're just going to put a radial over here, pull quite a big one. Look, pull it all the way across. We're going to, inside the radial gradient, there's 3 dots. Click on that and intersect with the sky. Okay. So we only want it on the sky. And then what we're going to do is we're going to brighten that up, add in perhaps a bit of color over there by moving the temp slider to the right, and just brighten that up a little bit more there. So the sky's nice and bright. That's good. Not too much, because you can see here it's just starting to get to the limits. And you can see over here on the histogram that we're clicking. If I hover over that triangle, you can see that's too bright. So we can either drop the whites or drop the highlights to bring that back in. So watch that triangle in the top right corner. I'll go to the highlights and I'll move them down, and it goes from white to yellow to red, meaning they're the colors that are still clipping. And then what I effectively do is I get to the bottom of the highlights, still not enough. So I go to the white slider and just ever so slightly -3 there. That brings that back in. So we're not clipping. Really important that we're not clipping up there. So we could perhaps think that there's a sun. The sun is in the sky up here. So let's create another mask. Let's go to another radial gradient, and let's put that radial gradient up in the sky up here. Okay, so not so big this time, but we're going to pop it on that bright area there. We're just going to brighten the whole thing just a little bit more. There we go. And I'm just going to add in a little bit more color. Now, this is the advantage of using RAWs over JPEGs, because we are working with, in this case, it's about 12-bit, but that's still, many millions of different shades of colors. If it was JPEGs, then we're limited at 8-bit. We're only limited to variables of each color of 256 different colors. So you tend to see banding, particularly in a sky where you have very slight changes in color or contrast or tone. You tend to see banding when you make alterations in JPEG. Of course, we export in JPEG, but that's when the image is complete, and so the differences can be actually computed very closely. But when you're making adjustments, you will see these bandings. Not so in the RAW so much. In the case of the Apple iPhone 15, which I'm using here, Pro RAW mode is 10-bit, so it's not the full maximum colors that you can get, but it still gives you an approximation of more than 1 billion different colors across all of the 3 main RGB colors. So it's still hugely greater than the 16 million that you get with JPEG, as you can see. So that's why we shoot RAW, and that's what we can extract from our phones. There we go. I've put that in the sky there. Let's just take away that information at the top there by pressing I. Just going to make that a little bit wider there. Just not quite so bright. That works. Looks like the sun's in the sky. I'm quite happy with that. We'll do some color alterations in a moment. But what we do need to do is make sure that the reflection is also emphasized down here. So I'm just going to click on the center there, right click, duplicate the mask. Okay, not the radial, because I want the mask itself so I can change it separately. If you do the radial, all the radials change when you make a change. So I'm just going to put this down here in the water. Let's make it quite a bit bigger so it's lighting up there. Now, the water always gives you slightly less of a brightness in reflection because there's a loss from the reflection. It's going to be brighter to match that, but it cannot be brighter than the sky out there, So what I'm going to do is go in around about there. That works quite well. Just a little bit less, because I think what I'm going to do is take another bigger duplicate there of this radial, and I'm just going to make that much bigger. Come across here a little bit more, and then bring that down so it's only slightly brighter. So it's lighting up the water. There we go. That's good. So let's just cut away from masks for a second and see how that looks. Sit back. It does look good. That light coming down here onto the water would also light up this pathway over here a little bit more. So let's go back into the masks. Let's create another mask. Let's take a radial gradient here, and we will take a gradient here for that area, and just sort of pick that up as it sort of moves its way down into the water there, something like that. And then we're just going to go back to exposure and just brighten that up just a little bit. Too much. There we go. That works quite well. Maybe make it a little bit wider. Don't want it in the sky. Okay, so we subtract from this the sky. Simple as that. And that gets us back into that position there. That's good. Right. So let's look at the plant life. I think the greens that you get in an image always can make an image. So what we can do is we can brighten certain greens and darken other greens, and that can work very well. There's a number of ways to do this. You can use a mask, go to brush. You can select auto mask, switch that on. Let's put the feather up quite high. Let's put a medium flow and just bring in a little bit of exposure. So we're going up to +118 there, nothing major. Take a slightly bigger brush, and because we're on auto mask, whatever color or brightness you start with, so if I pick this lighter bit of branch here and then click and hold and then just paint over there, it will only lighten those areas of the tree. Yeah, same down here. If I take this lighter green and then just come in here, it will brighten the lighter green areas. Let's do it on this tree over here. This looks quite good. So just going up there, it doesn't brighten anything else other than the things that the same color, the same brightness, and we can just emphasize those colors. Same over here on these tree, look, maybe a little bit on top of that bush as well. We can add a bit of contrast to this selection, not just exposure. We can add a bit of contrast. That makes it work very well. And we can also add some saturation just to make those colors pop that little bit more. So we can also do the opposite. We can take another brush, create another brush. We've still got the same settings, all right? We've still got good feather, low flow, but this time we'll go down slightly on the exposure and reduce the contrast slightly. And then in the darker areas, so under the tree here, we can just sort of pick up, there's a darker area through there, and we can just create a greater contrast in the colors and the brightness of each of the areas. There we go. So just a little bit there as well. I'm just going to pop back to the previous mask where we had, that's the light mask and that's the darker mask. I'm just going to select the darker mask here. Take a slightly bigger brush. Just want to add in a little bit more sort of contrast to these plants that are in the foreground. So I'm just darkening that area there. Same through here, just getting that darker bit. It just emphasizes more depth in your image when you do this. Can you see that we're just adding in that little bit darker there through here? And then we'll go back to the lighter one. We'll select 5 and we will just add in that little bit where it's brighter there, maybe along the edge here, maybe through here, and then a bit more along the top of those plants. So it just gives you a little bit more depth in the front and back there. So I'm going to come out of masks, I'm going to go down to effects, just going to pop in a little bit of a post-crop vignette, probably around about -10, just feather it off a little bit. And now we can go back and just find the final image where we want to be. So it's still a little bit darker, so I'm just going to brighten it ever so slightly. Remembering to keep an eye on these bright spots. So we're keeping an eye on that top right corner there, just as we come up a little bit more in brightness. Add a little bit of contrast to the scene. That's working well. We're still within the histogram, so that's all okay. I'm not going to open up the shadows anymore. Let's just check our blacks and whites. Hold down the Alt Option key. Go to the whites. We've got a little bit of white there, so I'm just going to back that off a little bit. Go to the blacks. Bring that down. A little bit of black there, so that's okay. I think, to be honest, the image is looking pretty good. I'm probably going to finish it just there. I hope that was helpful, how to use your iPhone. And of course, if you have an Android phone, you can do the same as well. This was just an image where the contrast wasn't particularly good, but I wanted to shoot the water gardens here. They were really, really nice, and I only had my iPhone, so that's what we did. So anyway, if you enjoyed that and you found it helpful, Please click like, and always like your comments and questions and any tips you've got. Please feel free to put them down below. Always try to answer those. And if you enjoy what I'm doing on YouTube, it'd be great for you to subscribe and join me as we go forward. But for now, I'm going to say bye-bye.